After completing chapter 4 of the Gita last Sunday, this evening, 12th February 1989, we are entering the 5th chapter. As I said before, these chapters are all very, very important, conveying a profound message to all humanity, not for people of India only. Wherever man is there and he strives for fulfillment, he needs a guidance, he needs a philosophy. It is that philosophy that is expounded in the Gita, and the very essential parts of that philosophy you get in these chapters. So today we shall enter this 5th chapter. It was referred to in the Gita. The name of the 4th chapter, Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. Sannyasa of karma through jnana. Not actual sannyasa means giving up. You work, but in the spirit of yoga. Jnana to strengthen it. In that way, the chapter is referred to. But the 5th chapter will be entitled a little differently, Jnana Sannyasa Yoga. Nama will come later on, the end of the 5th chapter. So the 4th chapter has given us a beautiful idea. But some of the ideas create doubt and confusion, did create in the mind of Arjuna, and quite a good number of people in India also. So the 5th chapter starts with a question dealing with whatever Krishna said in the 4th chapter. Arjuna finds some confusing elements in those teachings. That is the brought up in the opening verse of the 5th chapter. Arjuna Uvacha. Arjuna said, Sannyasam karmanam Krishna punat yogam cha samsasi yachraya etayoregan tanne bruhi sunishchitam. Krishna, you have praised sannyasa and karma. Karmanam Krishna. Pronunciation of all karma you have praised in the 4th chapter. Punar yogam cha samsasi, and you also praise karma yoga, what you call doing of actions. That also you are praising. Between the two, which is most excellent? Tell me that. That is Arjuna's question. The 3rd chapter also started with a similar question. In the 2nd chapter, he has expounded a philosophy that do karma, but in a spirit of buddhi. From the point of view of buddhi, it will be buddhi yoga, he has said. And towards the end, he has said, this realization must come in this very life. The whole life will be transformed by this realization. Then came the 3rd chapter, Arjuna raising the question. The word buddhi comes here, the word karma comes here, and buddhi is highly praised in the 2nd chapter. Buddha sharanam anvichya. Take refuge in buddhi, evolve buddhi in yourself. Such statements were there. So Arjuna got it out, and he started the 3rd chapter with this formulation. Jyayasi chet karmanaste mata buddhir janardana tatkim karmani ghore man niyojayasi Keshava. If you think buddhi is superior to your action, jayati chet karmanaste, better than karma, higher than karma is Buddhir Buddhi Janardana, then why do you engage me or press me to engage myself in this terrible action called ava? Tathim karmani ghore, this is a ghora karma. Prayojasi Keshava. You are persuading me to enter in this battle. So the next sloka said, Vyamishrayaneva Vakhyena Buddhim Mohersi Yame. Through conflicting statements, you are deluding my mind. Tadedam vada nischitya yena shreyoham apnayam. Please decide one between the two, which will lead to shreyas, welfare, excellence in life. Please tell me that which I can follow. Then came a wonderful exposition of Karma Yoga in the 3rd chapter, answering these questions. Here in the 4th chapter, a few such remarks had come, and Arjuna found them confusing again. What are those remarks? We studied them during the last few weeks. One such is verse 33, where Krishna said, Sarvam karmakhilam partha jnane parisamapyate. All karma finally get consummated into jnana. That is one statement. Then, jnanatme sarvakarmani bhasmasat kurute tatha. This fire of jnana burns to ashes all karma. These two sentences came earlier. And at the end of the chapter, the last verse 42, Krishna again said, saying, then tasmat ajnanajam sambhutam yogam adishta uttishta bharata. That is the slogan. Giving up this delusion that has come through ajnana, stand up, take up this great work before you, yoga. Don't lie down, don't keep quiet. Uttishta is the language he has used. So, that is jnana, burning up of all action. I can do it very well here. But you give it a standard. Go on working like this. That is terrible. You are conflicting. At least making my mind in conflict. So tell me what is to my welfare. Yat shreya etayor ekam. Between the two, one, it is to my shreya, welfare. Tanme bruhi. Tell me that. Sunishchitam. In clear language. Determined language, not with any element of doubt in it. That is Arjuna's question. Krishna's answer also is marvelous. In all these things you will find a clear thinking teacher. You will find unequivocal. But very often, even the clearest teaching can confuse people. That's the nature of all types of education. As Shankaracharya said in his commentary on the Kena Upanishad, beautiful Sanskrit sentence, Ekasmat Guroho Shunnatam Shishyanam Madhye. Among the number of students listening to a teacher in a class, Kaschit Yathavat Patipadyate. Some students understand exactly what the teacher has said. Kaschit ayathavat patipadyate. Some understand it wrongly. Kaschit viparitam patipadyate. Some understand it just the opposite of what the teacher said. Kaschit na patipadyate iti. Some do not understand a word at all. So there are the 4 types of students every teacher has to confront in his work of education. So, in the case of Gita also, these doubts come in spite of clearest language. And the whole Indian mind for the last 1000 years has been completely confused on this very question. If I am to improve my mind, and that is superior I should sit quiet at home and improve my mind. Why go about here and there? Why work hard? Let us be lazy. And the whole nation became lazy. And mind improvement also vanished. There is no mind improvement at all. So this wrong philosophy has ruined this nation. Mind you, undigestible philosophy we took, directly handling the mind. We have to train the senses, train the body, train the mind, then slowly great things will come. There is the education of the whole man, not merely the thinking aspect. And we became mere intellectuals. Even destroyed our emotional faculties, the capacity for love, human concern, we destroyed them, burned them away. Then absolute selfishness reigned. I. The whole body mind became the servant of the tiny ego within this individual. And can you see in our history, plenty of it, this misunderstanding. In this modern age, fortunately we had a teacher like the Vivekananda, Sri Ramakrishna. They have clarified these things. They are shown as example. Krishna himself showed his example. And he told it, I have nothing to gain in this world, but I am working tremendously all the time. Not a moment is wasted. He has said, that example we forgot. Shankaracharya, he taught us samadhi, but he lived the most active life. We combined both. We forgot the active side. We all went into samadhi, means deep sleep. For centuries together, all sleepy. Not even work, they have the capacity. When I watch people digging, lifting the, the spade, I find he is half sleeping. Like that going on, just a little. People working also half sleeping. That energetic work is nowhere there. Except, of course, for selfish purposes. Then they are very active. When it comes to the nation or the people, all are half sleeping. That is India today. This teaching must be understood by the people, implemented, and that is possible because this tremendous strength has come to the teaching through Swami Vivekananda. His life, his words, full of tremendous power, energy. Even a dead mutton will come to life. That is the energy in these words. People must educate themselves in these great ideas. So here comes Krishna's answer to this question, which is nagging a whole nation. We have to clarify it once for all in this modern period. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. Sri Bhagavan said, Sannyasa karma yogasya nishreyasakara ubhau tayoshcha karma sannyasat karma yogo vishishyate. There is no equivocation in this sentence. But we have tried to find equivocation. What did he say? Sannyasa and karma yoga. Renunciation of action to realize the Atman. The path of Sankhya, what we saw in the second chapter. And the other path, karma yoga. This tremendous work that we do in a spirit of detachment for the good of all. Both these are capable of leading man to high spiritual development. Nishreyasa. No doubt at all. Sannyasa karma yogasya nishreyasa karau. Both can lead us to nishreyasa, means moksha, perfect spiritual liberation. But kayostu, between the two ways, karma sannyasat karma yogo vishishyate. Renouncing actions is called sannyasa. That is not so good. Engaging oneself in action and developing the spiritual awareness around with it, that is far superior. Vishishyate. It is superior. It is more excellent as language. Tayostu karma sannyasat karma yogo vishishyate. You may go to a forest, live in meditation, and live a quiet life and try to realize your true self. That's beautiful. But You hear the cry of distress from thousands of people. You go to serve them, make them better. You still remain as a spiritual seeker. This is certainly far better than that. Mind you, such a teaching has come even from Buddha, though his teaching is essentially of the Sankhya Marga, that path of jnana, path of neti, etc. But when he went round the monastery, he found in one cell a monk lying from diarrhea, suffering from diarrhea. He asked him, "No other brother came to serve you, to look after you?" "No, sir. They were all in meditation." Buddha served him. Then other sadhus came slowly. He asked them, "Why you did not come to serve this person? He was in distress." "Sir, we were all in meditation, and you have taught us meditation." "What foolish thing," Buddha said. "You throw your meditation. When you see the man in distress, go and serve him." If the Buddha can say so, Krishna can say that 100 times more, because this teaching is essentially a teaching for practical spirituality. Spirituality in action. See the language. Spirituality in action. Behind this action is spirituality. But it does a double good. It gives me some spiritual strength. It brings solace and peace to people around me. Certainly that must be superior to this. That's the language. Tayostu karma samyasat karma yogo vishishyate. That is the clearest exposition. Third chapter also he had said, nobody remains without any action. Everybody does some action impelled by his own nature. Even sitting in meditation is an action. These are the words we have come there at that time. So better to do action for the Buddha form. Any ignorant man works for his own fattening his life and his stomach, etc. But the intelligent man, the wise man, the enlightened man, he works for the Buddha form. So he don't be an enlightened man. That comes in the third chapter. Satta karmanya vidvanso yatha kurvanti bharata kuryat vidvan satha asattaha chikeshu loka sangraham. To bring about loka sangraham, the welfare of the world. You are part of the world around you. You can't neglect all of them and remain quiet in your own way. That is not proper. That's called unenlightened attitude. This is enlightened attitude. Avidwan, Vidwan. Two types of people. The Vidwan will be busy making enormous efforts to gain for oneself. The Vidwan, on the other hand, will also work very hard. But he has in view the welfare of people around them. That is the two types he has shown. Apart from the third type, who will be busy developing his own spirituality, not at all worldly action, but is only concerned with his own salvation, his own peace of mind. He doesn't care there are hundreds of people starving there. He doesn't look that side at all. It is that philosophy that influenced our people for centuries together. And the result is so much of groans all over the nation. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. I care only for myself. Oh God, save me. Oh God, save me. Everybody going to temple. Praise only, oh God, save me. Oh God, save me. Nobody else. That's what we have done all this time. And yet groaning continues all around you. What kind of religion is it? What kind of spirituality is it? This question came in the modern period, first from Sri Ramakrishna and from Swami Vivekananda II. Sri Ramakrishna said, religion is not for empty bellies. Let the belly be full first. Let people have the ordinary choice of life, then higher ideas of religion will come. And Swamiji said, I do not believe in a religion that cannot wipe the widow's tears or stop the orphan's wails. These wails are going on all around us plenty even today. Can't I go and look after it? Can't we wipe away the tears in the eyes of people? Is it not religion? Ask that question. It is religion. Why? The philosophy comes there, based on the Upanishad. As the Gita is based on the Upanishad, Gita asks you to work. Why? Because work also is religion, is part of religion. Prayer is part of religion, work also is part of religion. But we never understood this. The Upanishadic teaching. Today Sri Ramakrishna comes and tells you that teaching. What is this world? The same Brahman on whom you meditate in your heart, he is there in front of you in these millions of forms. We all have come from Brahman. The universe has come from Brahman, lives in Brahman, returns to Brahman. So when Sri Ramakrishna told, Vivekananda says, meditate, closing your eyes on God within you, and when you open your eyes, the same God is there in front of you, serve them. There are no two gods here, only one. He is there inside as well as outside. Antar bahishyatat sarvam vyapya Narayana sthitaha. The Narayana Upanishad comes the shloka. Narayana exists both inside man and outside man. We don't have a devil in our philosophy. Inside it is all God. Open your eyes, only devil. We have no such idea. The same divine is in every being. So service of the man becomes worship of God. Ramakrishna expressed it in very beautiful language. Every jiva is Shiva. Service of the jiva is the worship of Shiva. So we get today pure Advaita, leading to love and compassion and service. Formerly Advaita was meant saying neti neti, not this, is all samsara, I am far away. That Advaita was what people took, a negative Advaita. We want to be alone, we want to realize our own self. We don't want this samsara, we don't want this trouble. That's the idea that came. Some of the later books also mention the same thing. Duniya teen kaal mein nahi hai. In Hindi we say, in monastic communities. This world doesn't exist in the three time of past, present and future. Why worry about it? But the worry in man is there. He is in distress, he is suffering. You ignore all this. So, that Advaita has become transformed into real Advaita today, that there is only one. When you close your eyes, he is there. When you open your eyes also, he is there. That message came in the Mundaka Upanishad, which we studied here before we took up the Gita. Brahmaidedamamatam. This whole world of manifestation is the same immortal Brahman. Brahmaidedamamatam. See, the word idam means this manifested universe. What is this? It is Brahman. What Brahman? Amatam Brahman. That immortal Brahman is this universe. Brahmaidedam amatam. Purastat Brahma. In front is Brahman. Paschat Brahma. Back is Brahman. Dakshinavasya Uttarayana. Right as well as left is all Brahman. Athaschodham kya prasrutam. He is spread above as well as below. Then finally, Brahmaidedam Vishwamidam Varishtam. This Vishwam is that supreme divine Brahman. That is the Mundaka Upanishad. Wonderful statement. The Gita teaching, today Ramakrishna Vivekananda teaching of Advaita is based upon this idea. The divine is the heart of all. We have to serve the Lord by serving people around. We contracted this whole teaching later on in our Bhakti religion up to the temple. In the temple we feel there is some presence of the divine. Outside it is all hopeless, samsara, meant to be rejected. This kind of attitude came. That's why if you find a person, he goes to the temple, he cuts the grass there with great devotion, because that act has behind it the devotion to the divine, that image of God that is there. You can wash vessels, you can cut grass there, and when you return you feel you have done a religious act. Do the same thing in the public? No, that is all samsara. The whole thing is samsara. Who makes it samsara? Your attitude. You concentrated God only in that particular image. You couldn't see Him elsewhere. Therefore you made your religion so narrow, so non-human and also anti-human. That is what happened to our religious ideas in this country. That's what is being corrected by Sri Ramakrishna and Swamiji, their teachings. That this wonderful teaching is meant to make for fulfilled humanity. No suffering anywhere. We are here to reduce the suffering. Life means suffering. But there are people who are there to help me. Then I can bear my suffering better. Go to the village today. If they see that you are there to help them, they feel tremendously encouraged. Nobody has encouraged them. Everybody has gone to exploit them only till now. Go to the tribals. Everybody has gone to exploit them. Let somebody go. I am here to help you. By saying it won't do, they will suspect you. You have to show by your living there, you are their friend. And once you demonstrate that, they open up their hearts. They are treated as, you are treated as his real friend. So this kind of attitude must be pervasive in society, east or west. The developed nations, the developing nations, everywhere, they are one. That wonderful Advaitic vision can make for tremendous change in the world today. Yesterday the British High Commissioner, previous High Commissioner, Dr. Thompson, Sir John Thompson, he spoke on democratic leadership in the 21st century at the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. I was presiding over it. This subject came. The whole world has to be raised. You can't raise only one part of the world. We need a philosophy for it. We need a particular ideology for it. Not mere humanistic jargon. That won't do. That won't keep you fully inspired. We must have a basis and truth before our action. That truth is what Advaita proclaims. There is only one infinite self in all. This many is only on the surface, at the sensory level. Deep down, there is perfect unity. You and I are one. Then love alone can come out of your heart. Service alone can come out of your heart. That subject came. So I wanted to know that being in high politics in England, he was also in the United Nations. I asked him, have you read Ramakrishna Vivekananda's life by Samarola? He said, no, I have not heard of it or read it. I said, please, I shall give you a set the Rajaji Institute will give you, because he's such a fine person. One aspect has yet to be touched by him. How to make people really interested in the others. By merely exhorting, love others, it's not going to come. Some great inspiration must come from within. Vivekananda, he has great regard for Samarola, so I thought it will do immense good if he also knows, because mere political approach won't do. We need a philosophy of human unity, of human service. That philosophy will be very inspiring. Vivekananda preached it, and the world likes it today to hear. That's why his books are very much in demand. Even in Soviet Russia today, where they have started a Vivekananda Society themselves, the intellectuals and scientists of Soviet Russia, in Moscow they have started a Vivekananda Society, because they feel the problems afflicting the world today need a philosophy to make it recover from it. A wrong philosophy has brought us to this trouble. A more comprehensive philosophy we need today. And Vedanta is that comprehensive philosophy, the science of human possibilities, if I can use the word coined by Sir Julian Huxley. So that is why it is attracting people more and more. And it is so rational. You can question, you can turn it upside down, try to understand it, try to experiment, try to realize it for yourself. And the whole thing is, the experience is here, in this very life. It's not a passport to a heaven. So because of that wonderful quality of Advaita, as expressed in the Upanishads, Gita, many parts of Ramayana, Mahabharata, Srimad Bhagavatam, and the wonderful original message of Buddha, that Advaitic vision, out of which alone infinite compassion can come, even to the animals, by feeling of oneness. Now that is what can dominate the world situation today. If 21st century, more people understand this truth, that will be really a bright century. Everything is ready. But there is so much of distortion, so much of violence, so much of crime, so many distortions of the human mind. This cannot go by merely political methods. Even democracy itself can become a mobocracy, I said yesterday. There is democracy that condemned Socrates to death. It was a democracy in Athens, but became mobocracy. They can't understand higher levels of life, so they condemned this great man to death. That made Plato the hatred, tremendously a hater of democracy. Plato said democracy is absolutely mobocracy. There is nothing high in it. If you want to make democracy succeed, this element of ethical, moral, spiritual growth must come to people. That has to be done. So in Vedanta you will find, therefore, with all the modern science, with all the techniques, social, political processes, there is also this tremendous spiritual orientation given to human life and human development that appeals to many, many thinking people. And increasing numbers of people, including, as I said, people in the communist countries, to whom these were all anathema till now. Even the Indian communists, like CPM in Calcutta, have started praising Vivekananda recently. In one of the articles there, they had never done it before. The world is changing. They are seeking for a guidance, a philosophical guidance. They don't get it from simple political teachers. They can take you some distance, not more than that. Just like the 18th, 19th century industrial revolution, scientific technique took the Western nations some step forward. They abolished poverty, many other things. But so many other evils have come. Some evils have gone. Other evils have come. Those evils are deeper. This, what you see in the West today, there is no complete philosophy of life, only sectional philosophies of life. They are all in search of this complete philosophy. That's why the word holistic comes again and again in Western literature today. Holistic medicine, holistic life, holistic health, holistic this and that. Holistic, not what you call cut up into bits here and there. So this is how this subject is so important today for us in India and for others elsewhere. And they are in search. They are not able to get it so easily, but they understand things better than we people here. We are not able to grasp it so much. The past centuries, pressure is on our minds. We have not yet felt the real problems of life. When that feeling will come, then we will come to this. We are satisfied today to go to a temple, ring a bell, and we have done everything. A few rituals are enough. That is our present condition. But wait. Life is becoming more complicated, more problems are coming, and the result is, as happened in the West, the traditional religious ideas can never make you face up to these challenges. You need something deeper, something strengthening, something heroic. That is what you get here. The hero teaching to another hero. That is the Gita. Arjuna was a hero. Krishna was a still greater hero. And he communicated this message, not for any goody-goody purposes of a little bit of cheap religion. That's all what we understand by religion. The lowest level of religious understanding in India, even among intellectuals and pundits, is go to Haridwar, catch out the tail of a cow, pay 5 rupees to a priest, and you will go to heaven. Finish. That is all of religion. That's the lowest level. So such cheap ideas are plenty all over India. Even top people will do these things. Ministers will do this every day. They have got plenty of other good things to do, to bring up this nation, to serve the nation, to give them strength, to make the nation sit on their shoulders, but not we sit on their shoulders. They are all the center of democracy. That kind of teaching we don't do. We don't call it religion. Religion is only when you go to some mystic, some godman here and there and do something. Many politicians are fond of that kind of religion. But to do the work that is given to you, raise this nation from suffering, from this kind of depression, that idea they don't have. That is why, in spite of too much politics, there is so little human development, human welfare. The cry goes on from more hearts every day, cry of distress. So Gandhiji's prescription to some people who went to him, what shall we do? Somebody asked him. He said, before you plan to do anything, sit quiet for some time and ask one question. Will what I plan to do bring welfare to the weakest person in my country? Then, if that answers properly to you, go ahead with the project. That's the most important thing today. He said, my life and work will continue till I wipe away the tears of the last crying person. These are beautiful ideas, highly spiritual and deeply political. Real politics is that, to make a man stand on his own feet. This nation belongs to you. You are the strength of this nation. Today we want to use the people. We don't want to develop them, but use them. All political parties are engaged using the people, making them as cattle, purchasing them for 5 rupees or 100 rupees. That is where this idea has to come to help us, this Gita teaching. There is so much of political strength in this teaching, democratic strength. In fact, this chapter, 5th chapter, is an expounder of the philosophy of equality. Samatva, Samadarshitva is a big theme that is coming in this chapter. They are all one. We are all one. Establish that sense of harmony, that sense of equality. What a beautiful thing. An ordinary person and standing before an extraordinary person, he doesn't feel small. He also has got some greatness about him. This kind of growth of man has to come in this age. The philosophy to help you is here. In this Gita teaching, it is practical Vedanta, practical Advaita. And Vivekananda said, there is no new textbook needed for practical Vedanta because it is already there in the best form in the Gita. So you are seeing the answer Krishna is giving. Tayostu karma sannyasat karma yogo vishishyate. I may have peace of mind, I am happy, I am free from all trouble. But does it absolve you from your responsibility to help suffering people around you? They are also in distress. Don't you have a heart? Does not the heart feel for others? What use of religion? The heart is completely dry. We developed a dried up heart in our country. Brilliant intellect, dried up heart. Hearts had never functioned for centuries together. Generally we thought women have a heart. But even the women's heart became so circumscribed to their own children. It never extended to anybody else. That is what happened to our country. So Vivekananda said, combine Shankaracharya's intellect with Buddha's infinite heart. Then you will become a great man yourself. That is the work we have to do in this modern period. Our intellect is bright, but our heart is very, very narrow. Why all these evils, like bright burning and other things? All because the heart is not there. The brain is there. Heart is absolutely dead. That is the nature of the human situation. That's why this teaching comes for practical implementation. Our character must be shaped in the light of this teaching. A new type of humanity has to come in the light of this teaching. Now Krishna is going one step further. He said, between renunciation of actions and sannyasa and doing actions in a spirit of karma yoga, the second is better. Second is more excellent, he has said. Now he goes still further in the next verse, verse 3. Nyayasya nitya sannyasi yona dveshti na kamshati nirdvandvo hi mahabaho sukham bandhat pramuchyate. Know that person to be a constant sannyasi, nitya sannyasi. Nyayasa nitya sannyasi, who yona dveshti makamshati, who has no hatred towards anybody, who is not greedy to possess everything for himself. That type of person who is a karma yogi, yona dveshti makamshati, nirdvandvo, free from these opposites of forces in society, like good and bad, happiness and misery. His mind is steady in the midst of all these dualities. Nirdvandvo, the Mahabahu, Sukham Bandhat Pramuchyate. He gets freed from all bondages easily. Sukham. And he develops this kind of mind. You are in the midst of work, in the midst of problems, but your mind is so trained, it is able to remain calm and steady and face all these challenges before you. Such a person is Nitya Sannyasi. What a beautiful expression. Sannyasa is so great. Everybody appreciates sannyasa in India. But what does sannyasa mean? Originally it meant giving up husband and wife and children and others, or husband and others, and go to the forest, live all alone. Don't cook food. Get it from begging. Niragni. The sannyasi is not expected to cook food for himself. A Buddhist sannyasi, what we call a bhikshu, is not permitted to cook food for himself. Suppose you go to a house and the housewife gives him raw rice and vegetables. He says, sorry, have you got any cooked food? Just a little, he will ask. He will not ask also, generally keep quiet. That's the rule for Buddhistic monks. So also Hindu monks. Monks are free from this kind of cooking and other things. He only lives from begging. And that begging also, a little from each house. They call it Mahasukari. Wonderful term they have coined for it. Like a bee that takes honey, material from various flowers, never disturbing a single flower, should be the monk who takes his food from 7 or 8 houses and not from one house. It is a burden to that person. The small thing is not a burden. Now this is the idea of sannyas. Now everybody can't be a sannyasi thereby. Then what happens? What about the others? So we are householders. We are samsaris. That attitude. No, you are also a sannyasi. Krishna is going to tell that to everyone. You are also a sannyasi. As soon as you develop this quality, you become a sannyasi. Whether you are living at home, living in the market, doing work, doesn't matter. It is the mind that is sannyasi. The attitude you have developed, your work is going on for the good of the world. That will continue. But your mind has become free. Sukham bandhat pramuchyate. You get easily free from bondage, what we call worldly bondage. That is one step further than the previous verse, but that's not enough. The next sloka clinches the whole issue. It says, verse 4, Sankhya Yoga Prathak Bala Pravadanti Na Panditaha Egamapyastito Astita Samyak Bhayor Vindate Phalak. Sankhya and Yoga, that kind of renunciation of all actions, going into the forest, trying to realize your Atman, that's called Sankhya path. In the second chapter, he has taken up this path and said that is not higher, there is a higher path coming. Then he called Yoga, Karma Yoga, Sankhya Yoga. Then he says here, these two paths are different, he said, only by men of undeveloped minds. Undeveloped minds are described in the Sanskrit language as Bala, immature children, baby stock. These two are different, is baby stock, that's the language. Bala Pravadanti, Na Panditaha. Those who are highly intelligent and wise, they will never say so, that these two are different. Why? Ekamapyastita Samyak Ubhayor Vindate Phalam. If you are well established in one, you reap the fruits of both. That's the language. Ekamapyastita samyak. You are doing karma yoga, you will establish. You are as good as a sadhu. You have renounced everything and gone away. This is the great status that Krishna gives to the householder, the person who has responsibilities to discharge, to work hard. They have completely forgotten this teaching. And one of the most evil things in India today, a feeling of smallness on the part of the householder. I am nothing. I am a samsari. I am only a grasta. I am not fit for this and that. That kind of degradation has come on the intelligent and wise. They will never say so, that these two are different. Why? Ekamapyastita samyak ubhayor vindate phalam. If you are well established in one, you reap the fruits of both. That's the language. Ekamapyastita samyak. You are doing karma yoga, you will establish. You are as good as a sadhu. You have renounced everything and gone away. This is the great status that Krishna gives to the householder, the person who has responsibilities to discharge, to work hard. They have completely forgotten this teaching. And one of the most evil things in India today, a feeling of smallness on the part of the householder. I am nothing. I am a samsari. I am only a grasta. I am not fit for this and that. That kind of degradation has come on the human mind. It is extremely bad to lose faith in oneself and in one's way of life. Have faith in yourself. I may not be very high householder, but I am a good householder. I carry my responsibilities properly. In that way, confidence must come. Krishna wants to infuse that confidence in people who have to face challenges, difficulties, and work, etc. This is the standard Indian idea of the householder. We have come and fallen far away, down from that idea. We are nobody, we are nobody. I have told people sometimes, why don't you be a little more helpful to people? Oh, we are only householders, we are not sannyasis. Like that answer will come. What do you mean? Is this not a joy for you also to serve people? They never understood. But go to Manusmriti. I often quote the famous law book and Manu's great thought there. The householder is given very high position by Manu. In a previous lecture, I have quoted this verse, but I am quoting it here in this context also. It becomes necessary to quote it once, you have to quote again in a new context. There he says, among the four ashramas, Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyasa. The Grihastha ashrama is the preeminent ashrama. That's the language. Grihastha ashrama is the preeminent ashrama. The sloka says, by educating and feeding all the rest of the three ashramas by his own labor, the Grihastha becomes the preeminent ashrama. Grihasthenaiva dharyante tasmat prayotya ashramina. All the rest of the three ashramas, the brahmachari is not an earning member because he is a student. The vanaprastha also doesn't earn. Sannyasi doesn't earn. Who runs the whole society? There is one single group called this Grihastha, the householder. Therefore, Yasthashrami Krihi. Among all the ashramas, this is called Yasthashrama. What a high status comes to the householder. But what is the nature of that householder? Its equivalent today is what you call the citizen in a free democracy. That citizen not only takes care of himself, he takes care of the whole nation. He is part and parcel of the nation. He has a sense of responsibility to the nation and to society. That is the Grihastha about whom Manu speaks, that by his labor he feeds and educates the rest of the society. What a wonderful work it is. That is where Krishna's yoga comes in. I am not a simple, what you call, samsari, a worldly person, small person. I have no status. That kind of demeaning has come by oneself, on oneself. That's why we are not able to achieve great things. That must go. Must realize this truth. This, whatever can be achieved by Sankhya path of sannyasa and jnana can be achieved by the yoga path of action and day-to-day dedication. This is the language. Yat sankhya prapyate sthanam tat yogairapi gamyate. Whatever high state you achieve through sankhya, that also you achieve through yoga. This sentence comes in Mahabharata, other trees also. Repeatedly it comes there. We have forgotten all this. Why? Because a national decay set in. A national weakness set in. Body became weak, mind became weak, and the will became weak. Weakest will we have in this country. Very weakest will. It becomes obstinacy. We have plenty of obstinacy. Will and obstinacy are not the same. Will can change. If you know that is not correct, obstinacy can never change. We often mistake obstinacy for will. Oh, that man has a strong will. That means very obstinate. He will never change. If you tell him that the hair that you have got has no horns, they are only 2 ears. No, they have got 2 horns. I'm sure. That's the language used in one of our languages, this obstinacy idea. So strength of will, clarity of thinking itself makes for precision in thinking, speaking, and action. We lack all the three. Precision we have destroyed long ago. What can be said in 2 sentences, we will take 200 sentences. And yet in the end we don't know what you said. In many lectures you can see, after 2 hours you don't know what the man has said. He has been saying, without any interest in anything. There is no clarity. There is no thinking power. There is no precision. Now these are all products of highly intellectually trained efforts that people have not tried. Let go the mind wherever it goes. So today, if you want to develop into a big nation, very powerful nation, we need to change the mind of the people. Make it a trained mind, not a stuffed brain. Mostly it is a stuffed brain. Opinions it can give, plenty. Any meeting you go, people will go on talking. Wherever the mind takes it, it goes there. He doesn't know how to control the mind, bring it to the subject. When the president cannot control the speaker, everything goes on. Of course, president also often talks for another 1 hour. That is also true. So all our panchayats, Vidya Parishads, university senates, and the assemblies, all of them, you will find plenty of talk. Down to the work to be done, the action program, there is very little, because clarity is not there. Thinking is not to the point, because the heart is not moved by the human situation. When you see a man in distress there, you can't go and deliver a lecture to him. You are there to remove that distress. That is the first work you have to do. What Buddha told. When a man was stung by an arrow, the man was suffering, and another man went to him. Now tell me, who shot this arrow at you? Tell me, from what tree was wood taken to make this arrow? He went on talking. Now Buddha took this example. By the time he replies 2-3 such questions, he would die away. Go and remove the arrow first, he said. That is the first thing to be done. Remove that arrow. Then we can discuss plenty, the theory of all these things. That is a wonderful way. And we need that teaching very much today. People are in distress, people are in suffering. Remove that. Then you can have a discussion about the political conditions, etc., of the country. So, this sloka, 4th verse, is very, very important. Yat sankhya prapyate sthanam tad yogairapi apigamyate ekam sankhya cha yogam cha yat pashyati sapashyati. What is yoga? What is sankhya? They are really one. There is no difference between the two. That is real understanding. That is real seeing the truth, is what Krishna says, here to a householder who wants to respect a sannyasin who has given up the world and gone a lonely life, there is no harm in respecting somebody, not at the cost of demeaning oneself. Don't demean yourself while you respect somebody else. That is the first lesson we have to learn. Our self-respect must be maintained. Then only that salutation has a meaning. But what do you find? Even in politics, people seeking a ministerial post or something, going touch the feet of all the ministers, all the chief ministers, going on, demeaning oneself. Where's that dignity? It is gone, absolutely gone. Gita won't allow it. If you want to touch the feet of somebody, do so. But as a result of your own dignity. By doing that, you must feel your dignity enhanced. That can never happen unless the one who touches the feet of is a good man, is a man of moral values. Then only you feel dignified thereby. Otherwise you also go down. Once I remember in Chandigarh and in Amritsar, I was addressing the medical college. The principal is a Sikh gentleman, very fine person, very independent, and always in trouble with authorities because he is very independent. He doesn't mind. He goes in his own way. I met him again in Kabul when he was in charge of the children's hospital donated by Government of India, run entirely by Indian personnel and Indian goods. They took me to that hospital, so he was there in charge. But during that time, he heard all these lectures. Every day I used to give this in Kabul. After a few days before I left, one day he came towards me and he said, I don't salute anybody, I'm very independent, but I want your permission to bow down to you. This language. I said, if by bowing down like that you feel your own self-respect is enhanced, then do so. Don't do it under any other condition. He was very happy. He is already a man of tremendous self-respect. He has nothing to lose. So he did it and he was happy. Now this is a thing we must keep in view. Anything that demeans somebody else should not be done. Anything that demeans oneself should not be done. Let everybody be raised in his own self-respect. Then only we can have a healthy human society. Krishna is stressing that point in this wonderful verse. Sankhya yoga prathak balaha pravadanti. Only children say, undeveloped minds say that Sankhya and yoga are different. Ekamapyastita samyak ubhayor vindate phalam. If you are established in one, you are equally established in the other also. Now it is this idea you get in Swami Vivekananda's famous book, Karma Yoga. Extremely popular, beautiful English. His lectures delivered in America, Karma Yoga. The second chapter is entitled, Each is great in his own place. Is Sannyasin greater or a Grahastha greater? Each is great in his own place. That is the subject, and beautiful illustration is given there. In what way one is great or the other is great. That is what our nation must learn today in a big way. Therefore, we end up with this wonderful verse. Verse 4. Ekamapyastita samyak ubhayor vindate phalam. The next slogas are in continuation. And then beautiful new ideas come, including that concept of equality of man in society. That's why this chapter is very, very important. We shall take up verse 5 onwards next Sunday when we meet here.